They called us crazy. Not behind our backs either. They said it in academic papers published across 4-star systems. They said it in compact assembly halls with 17 different species listening. They flickered it in bioluminescent pulses across their skin, which was apparently the Thalvari way of gossiping. And Sev, my translator, my partner, my 7-foot mantis-shaped best friend, would quietly tell me what they were saying and then add, "Please do not react," in that tired voice he had developed specifically for me. My name is Marco Reyes, former UN Interspecies Liaison Officer, currently retired, currently sitting at a bar on Earth that smells like sawdust and old beer, and currently about to tell you the story of the night a bar fight changed galactic history. I know how that sounds. Stay with me. The year was 2187. Humanity had been in the Galactic Compact for 11 years. 11 years of formal sessions, carefully worded treaties, diplomatic uniforms that made us all look like hotel staff, and a persistent, galaxy-wide reputation for being the strangest species anyone had ever encountered. Not dangerous, mind you. Not impressive, just strange. We were the new ones, the odd ones, the species that had crawled out of a death world and somehow not only survived but had the nerve to show up at the galactic table and ask for a seat. The Meridian Crossing was a way station bar at the intersection of 3 major trade routes. It sat in neutral space, which meant every species came through eventually, and most of them had opinions about one another, and the bar's owner, a 6-armed Pelion named Usk, had long ago stopped caring about anything except whether people were paying for their drinks. The lighting was low, the music was something no human instrument could recreate. The air smelled like 12 different atmospheres filtered through one ventilation system, which sounds terrible, and honestly kind of was. Sev and I were celebrating. A minor trade deal, nothing galaxy-shaking, but it had taken 4 months of careful negotiation, and I was tired, and I wanted a drink. Sev did not drink in the human sense, but he did consume a particular atmospheric mixture through his spiracles that made his antenna tips glow faintly gold, which he claimed was not intoxication, and which I had long ago decided not to argue with. We were comfortable. We were relaxed. We were, for the first time in weeks, not working. That was when the Kreth sat down at the table next to ours. Now, the Kreth were old. I mean that in every sense. Their civilization had been spacefaring for 6,000 years before humans had invented the wheel. They were reptilian and aristocratic and beautiful in the way that very old, very dangerous things sometimes are. All smooth scales and slow movements, and eyes that had seen empires rise and collapse before Earth had developed agriculture. Their lead diplomat was named Grixtal, and he had been personally responsible for blocking human expansion rights in the Compact for the past 3 years. Every proposal we submitted, every system we requested access to, every resource negotiation, Grixtal was there, elegant and immovable, explaining politely why humanity was not quite ready. He did not lower his voice when he spoke about us that night. Sev translated quietly, his antenna barely moving, his voice so low I had to lean in to hear. The Kreth were holding court for a smaller delegation, some species I did not recognize, green-skinned and wide-eyed, and apparently very interested in what the Kreth thought of things. Grixtal was explaining humanity to them the way a professor explains a curiosity to first-year students. The Compact allows them membership out of charity, he said. They are children with warships. Their entire history is a sequence of self-inflicted disasters from which they recover only through luck and stubbornness. They are, by every measurable metric, the most irrational species ever admitted to the Galactic Compact. The green-skinned delegation flickered with interest. They asked questions. Grixtal answered them, smooth and certain, never once glancing our way, because why would he? We were just background. I listened to the whole thing. Sev kept his antenna very still, which was his version of holding his breath. He was watching me the way a person watches a pot they think might boil over. I did not boil over. I was curious. I leaned across the small gap between our tables, and, in my most polite voice, in the formal compact dialect Sev had spent 2 years teaching me, I said, "Excuse me, Ambassador Grixtal, I heard the word irrational used several times. I was hoping you might explain what you mean specifically." The table went quiet. The green-skinned delegation stared. Sev made a very small sound that I believe was prayer. Grixtal looked at me for the first time. slow, measuring, with those ancient eyes. He had expected, I think, anger or submission. He had not expected a question, and the fact that it threw him, just slightly, just for a moment, told me something useful. He explained. He was thorough about it, which I respected. He said that humans ran toward danger instead of away from it, that we had a neurochemical response to near-death situations that registered as something resembling pleasure, which had been documented by compact medical researchers, and which those researchers had described in their papers using language that translated loosely to deeply alarming. He said that we had fought wars against one another for our entire recorded history, and then written stories celebrating those wars, and then taught those stories to our children. He said that we voluntarily engaged in physical activities designed to simulate harm for entertainment. He said that the combination of these behaviors, viewed together, produced a psychological profile that no other known species shared, and that the word for this profile was irrational. I listened to all of it. I nodded in several places. When he finished, I said, "Yeah, that's fair," and turned back to my drink. He did not know what to do with that, and I admit I enjoyed it. The night moved on. Sev's antenna glowed a little more gold. I ordered a second drink. The bar filled up further, the noise rising to that comfortable level where you could feel it in your chest without being able to make out individual words. There was a table of Vaughn mercenaries near the back. The Vaughn were the galaxy's bruisers, big, blunt-featured, with a culture that valued direct physical strength and not much else. They were not bad people. They were simply people who had evolved in a very specific direction and had not seen much reason to evolve further. One of them was drunk. I noticed this before anything happened, which I want to be clear about. I saw it coming. I just did not expect him to handle it the way he did. He knocked into our table. My drink went sideways. He looked at the spilled glass, looked at me, and said something that Sev translated as a comment about Earth being an insignificant biological accident in an unimportant corner of the galaxy. Standard bruiser behavior, completely textbook. Every species in the compact would have handled it the same way. Formal complaint to station security, or quiet withdrawal, or a diplomatic communication filed in the morning. Those were the two options. That was the menu. I picked up my half-empty glass, turned to the Vaughn and clinked it against his arm like a toast. "Brother," I said, in the trade dialect, "you have absolutely no idea." He stared at me. The Vaughn was not used to that response. He processed it for a moment, decided it was aggression of some kind, and shoved me. Here is the thing about me that my diplomatic file mentions, and that my supervisors had spent 11 years learning to work around. I grew up in Buenos Aires. I played rugby for 15 years. I once fought off a mugger with a traffic cone and felt, afterward, mostly fine about it. I am not a violent man. I do not like violence. But I have a body that was built by a planet that treated violence as a basic part of the curriculum. And when the Vaughn shoved me, something very old woke up in my spine and made a small, calm suggestion. I shoved back, harder. It went from there. The Vaughn's friends stood up. I did not back down, which confused them, because species that do not back down are usually bigger than them, and I was not bigger than them. Sev was broadcasting on 3 emergency frequencies simultaneously. The green-skinned delegation was very still, the way small animals go still when something unexpected happens nearby. And then Grixtal stood up, not to fight. The Kreth did not fight in bars. It was beneath them. He stood up to stop it, which was a reasonable thing to do, and he crossed to the Vaughn's table and placed one scaled hand on the shoulder of the drunk mercenary to signal de-escalation. The drunk mercenary, who at this point was not sure exactly what was happening or who had started it, hit Grixtal in the jaw. Things became very lively after that. The Kreth delegation stood up. The Vaughn table stood up. 3 other species got pulled in through proximity and loyalty, and the universal biological response to loud noises and sudden movement, which is apparently shared across star systems. Someone broke a bottle. A table went over. The species that communicated entirely through color changes cycled through every visible wavelength in rapid succession, which in their language apparently meant something like, "I have several conflicting feelings about this situation." I was in the middle of it. I want to be honest, I was not trying to make it worse. I was not trying to be a hero. I was doing the thing my body knew how to do, which was stay on my feet, cover my head, keep moving, and when possible, pull people apart rather than push them together. I took a hit from a Vaughn elbow that made my vision go white for a second. I gave back something that felt equally unpleasant. I knocked into Sev, who had folded all 6 of his limbs tight against his body and was waiting for it to be over, with the patience of someone who had been through this before. And through all of it, I was laughing. Not nervous laughter. Not the kind that means you are scared. The real kind. The kind that comes from somewhere underneath thought. From the part of you that is still, at some level, an animal on a difficult planet, that learned a long time ago that you might as well enjoy the chaos, because the chaos was not stopping on your account. Station security arrived with the particular energy of people who were tired and unsurprised. Everyone was separated. Everyone was bruised or bleeding, or the species equivalent thereof. Reports were being filed in 7 languages. The diplomatic fallout was going to be enormous. I could already feel the size of the paperwork. I was sitting with a cold compress on my eye when the Vaughn who had started it, Drek, his name was Drek, came over and sat across from me. He looked at my face. I looked at his. We were both in approximately the same condition. He said something. Sev, from a safe distance, translated it as an apology. Not a formal one. Just the word, blunt and direct, the way Vaughn did everything. I handed him my drink, what was left of it. He took it. We sat there for a moment. Then I said something that made him laugh, which I will not repeat here because it does not translate well, and after that we were fine. It was done. It was simply done. Grixtel had been watching this from across the room. I felt him watching before I looked up and confirmed it. Those ancient eyes were doing something I had not seen them do in 4 years of opposing each other in compact sessions. They were uncertain. He crossed the room. He sat down across from me without asking permission, which told me something had shifted. He looked at me the way someone looks at a document that keeps saying something they did not expect. "You were not afraid," he said. "Of that? No. You were struck. Multiple times. Yeah. And this is acceptable to you." I thought about it honestly. I mean, it's not my preference, but yes. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I have studied your species for many years. I have read every report, every psychological profile, every medical analysis. I believed I understood the pattern." He paused. I did not account for the laughing. I leaned back. My eye was throbbing. The cold compress was doing very little. I was tired, and a little dizzy, and somehow in a better mood than I had been in weeks. "Let me tell you something," I said. "My species spent 100,000 years on a planet that was trying to kill us. Predators, ice, disease, each other. We were not the strongest thing on that planet. We were not the fastest. We did not have armor or venom or wings. What we had was the ability to get knocked down, get back up, and keep going. And somewhere in there, we learned to laugh about it, because the alternative was lying there and giving up, and we were never very good at giving up." He watched me without speaking. "The Vaughn over there is not my enemy," I continued. "He is a person who had too much to drink and made a poor decision. I have done the same. We settled it the way our kind settles things. It is finished." I looked at Grixtal steadily. "You have been blocking human expansion for 3 years. That I have more patience with. Because that is not one bad night. That is a position. And positions can change." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, very carefully, "I have been incorrect about your species in several significant ways." 3 weeks later, the Kreth abstained from the vote. The measure passed. Humanity received access to 12 new systems. I got a commendation I never told anyone about. The Meridian Crossing implemented a new policy. No interspecies political discussion after the 3rd round. And somewhere in the Kreth academic archive, Grixtal published a revised paper. He removed the word irrational entirely. He replaced it with a term in Old Kreth that Sev spent a week trying to translate accurately, turning it over and over, before settling on the closest version he could find. Resilient beyond reasonable expectation. I keep a copy of that paper. Not framed or anything, just folded up in a drawer. Drek sends me a bottle of something illegal every solstice. I have no idea how he gets it through customs, and I have never asked. We are a strange species. I know that. I knew it before Grixtal said it. We run toward fire. We laugh when we should be frightened. We forgive people who hit us, and then share drinks with them. And we hold grudges against ideas for decades. And we write songs about our worst moments and call them beautiful. I used to wonder if that was a flaw. I do not wonder anymore.